Hello everyone, welcome to my channel about writing stuff. My name is Camille and today we are talking about subplots. So what are subplots? Well, subplots are baby plots, smaller plots, plots that are not as large and fully mapped out as the main plot in your story. Not to be confused with side quests, which if you're a gamer you know what I'm talking about. A side quest is a separate adventure or goal that needs to be reached that is somewhat tied into the plot, but for the main plot, but for the most part is mainly separate. A subplot is a small thread that should be woven throughout your main plot in a very natural way. And a subplot can be anything. I want to say that first and foremost. I think a lot of people describe subplots as romance or relationship fueled, which for the most part they're right. It's easy to pick up a subplot for a character because story is about character. It's about how the character interacts with events and other people in the world and all these different things. But I want to put a different angle on it too. So just a list of subplots that you can have in your story. This is by no means a full list, but you can have an adventure story with a mystery plot. You can have a thriller story with a romance plot. You can have a relationship story with a heist plot. You can have a comedy story with a religious subplot. You can have an adventure story with a political subplot, whatever you want to do. And you can have multiple subplots. It really just comes down to the scope of the story that you want to tell. If you want to tell a large scope story with multiple different characters and cultures in this vast wide open world, then you can have dozens of subplots. It doesn't matter. The first tip I'm going to give for this, though, is the main one. It is to look at your characters. You should never start a story and make it feel like your characters begin when the story begins. All of your characters should feel like real people inside of your world. They should have a history and a past. They should have wants and desires and relationships and events outside of the main plot. For example, in one of my books, I have a character with a band of other characters trying to get to the heart of discord that's going on in this city. However, he's also a business owner. He owns an inn. He needs to run the inn and keep it up to par in city standards. So that would be considered a subplot for him. Yes, he's trying to save the sanctity of his city, but he also has a job and a family that he needs to provide for. So that could be a subplot for him. Every single Jane Austen novel, for example, we all know that they are romance stories. You pick up a Jane Austen novel knowing that someone's going to fall in love and that there is going to be a happy ending. However, the reason why we read these stories, the Jane Austen stories, is because we want to see how the characters fall in love, but we also want to see the subplot of how these characters sort of navigate the politics of courting. That is a big subplot and a big theme in Jane Austen novels. That's something you can do. That adds flavor to a story, having subplots. The Hobbit's an adventure story, and it's a heist story, but it's also a story about Bilbo's character arc. It's a story about how Bilbo changes, and that is a subplot. He goes from this comfortable hobbit who enjoys his food and doesn't want to leave his little hole in the ground, but then he does, and he becomes brave and courageous. And part of The Hobbit, part of why it's so great, is we get to see how Bilbo changes. That is a subplot. Elantris by Brandon Sanderson is a mystery story. It's what happened to the Elantrians. Where did the magic go? Why doesn't the magic work anymore? But it's also a story about politics. There's also a subplot about religion and a side story about religion. And that's a great way to add depth to your books, is to know, I always come back around to this, it's know your characters, know your world, know where your characters came from, and these things will start to feel very natural as you get to know them and as you get to write them. If you're struggling with this, look at your own life. For me, it's, I guess the plot of my life, the main plot of my life is, let's say I want to be a novelist. That's the main plot of my career life. But I also have a day job. So I need to attend to that day job and keep that day job to help pay the bills. But I also have a side art career. So that art career is another subplot in the main I want to be a novelist plot of my life. So those are just some examples of things. But how do we do this? How do we integrate these subplots into our main plot? This brings us back around to the first plotting video that I did, when I said where every single scene in your story should be doing multiple things. So you have your outline, and let's say you have a scene where, it's a mystery. You have a story, there's a dead body on the floor, we need to find out who the killer is, but you also want it to be a romance. Well, let's say you have a scene where two characters find a clue. Can you put in a character moment in that scene? Can you put in some interaction in that scene where your characters get closer or interact in some way that would lend to the reader, yes, these characters are getting closer. They might fall in love at the end of the story. Or let's say you're writing an adventure story and you need a scene of your characters traveling from point A to point B. Well, you could throw in a little bit about the religion going on. Maybe you have a character who is part of some religion and they're struggling, with the conflict between the religion and the adventure. Maybe in this religion, they're not meant to go out adventuring alone or be on the road alone or something like this. And it really just comes down to your story as a puzzle. You have the general frame idea, you have the main plot, but you need to put all the pieces and colors together so that they fit succinctly. The last thing I want to touch on, though, is I plot and outline extensively. However, once I start drafting, once I start putting in all these pieces together, new things do come to light when I start drafting. New aspects about my character's personality, new things about the world and the cultures and the religions and the subplots. So by all means, if something comes to light, you can always change your outline. You can always change your plot. You can always add things and take things out. Your first draft doesn't need to be clean, especially if you are a discovery writer. If you don't plot or pre-plan as extensively as, say, I would, then your first draft could really just serve as your outline. That way you can find out what your story is actually about, and then you go back and redraft, or you go back and revise, which we will talk about drafting and revising and all of those things in future videos. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys on the subplots. If you have any questions, personal questions that are specific to your story and you'd like me to touch on those things, just drop those below. My resource for this week is just another random resource that I use all the time because I love it, and it is Joanna Penn's videos over on her channel. It's the Creative Penn channel. I'll link that below. But what I really enjoy about Joanna's videos is that she does interviews with authors who are successful and who are making it and who are constantly writing. And I think that there's still a stigma about writers and the arts in general that, if you venture to be an artist of any kind, you're just going to be a starving artist. But that's not true. There are plenty of people that make a living at writing, and it's really great for my self-esteem, and not only my self-esteem, but my need to gain knowledge, to see people working at this sort of career with success and being able to support their families. So like I said, I'll link that below. Next week, we're going to be getting into some fun stuff. I might do a bonus video, or I might do the first lines video that I was really excited about, so stay tuned for that. I post new videos on Fridays, and if you have any other questions, feel free to tweet me at Camille A. Singer. So that's all I have. I'll see you guys next week, but for now, you should be writing stuff.